Awesome. Hi, everyone. This is Ashley. I am a principal at VamosVentures. We are an early stage fund, so pre-seed to Series A based in Los Angeles, with a mission to invest in diverse founding teams and really doubling down on the Latina founding team, co-founder, and just general Latino end market. And what really matters to us is mission and alignment and impact. And I personally cover the health and wellness space. So what that means too is health equity, which I know is a big part of this conference today. What we'll be talking about is early stage fundraising and how VCs look at deals. I know equity is a big word for today. And so as an investor, that's something really important to me. And, leveling the playing field in terms of what VCs look at behind the curtains. I'm sure there are a lot of founders on the call, as well as future founders, future investors, former founders. And so hopefully this session will be helpful for you. And by the way, I'm going to run through this, but if you have questions throughout, please put them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end of the session. Awesome. So let's begin. There's no right way to look at a deal. I think what you'll see is you'll meet a variety of different folks in venture, and there'll be a variety of different ways to look at a deal. Particularly within the health and wellness space, you'll get some people who are more consumer healthcare focused versus, health data, B2B heavy. I personally come from the consumer healthcare background. And so, I really like those companies more than others, but there's a bunch of different personalities, backgrounds, and orientations within the venture space, as well as the founding world. And you'll see that each deal is different. As I mentioned, this session will provide you with an outline of how VCs look at early stage companies. I think so far in my career, the most important thing that I've learned is what matters most is the founding team and that vision. And is the pain point really something that is that they feel themselves? And I think it's especially meaningful in the healthcare space when we all go through different experiences, whether it's our families or ourselves, that really hit home and really want us to build companies that are meaningful and impactful in the general health and wellness landscape. It's likely that your company will change during the earliest innings, and VCs get this. And my last point here is that because of that, there's a lot of praying involved and in both early stage investing and company building. That said, there are a few key areas when VCs look at deals. So one is product. That's what the company offers, the solution. The second is market, the landscape. That could mean competition, adjacent, how big the market is. We'll get into more specifics in a second. The third is business model, so how the company makes money and scales. And then traction, which means different things at different stages, whether you're pre-product, pre-revenue, or Series A company. These are the KPIs, the numbers that investors want to look for. And what's not on here, and what I'd like to talk more about it at the end, is the impact focus. At Vamos, we're very impact, mission driven. What that means at our particular fund within the health and wellness context or outside, how we track that at portfolio companies, and how we encourage founders to be mindful of the impact that they have in their businesses. This is a typical deal timeline. There are many, many nuances. This is just a very simplified graph of what on average is anywhere between a 3 to 4 week process. So typically an investor finds the deal or the founder finds the fund. That could be through networks, schools, old jobs, on Twitter or social media, at demo days. You can get really creative with this. If there's conviction, you move into diligence, and that's actually analyzing the deal. That means a lot of different things. It could mean, talking to customers, doing that market landscape and analysis, asking a lot of the questions that we're actually going to go through in a second. And then if there's still conviction in the deal, going and presenting it to the investment committee, which is usually the fund, the partnership, and seeing, through a voting process if it's something that that you'd want to invest in, and then actually putting money behind the deal. Again, many moving parts here and nuances, but typically this is what the process looks like. Now, going back to those key areas of analysis for a deal is product, and that means what the company offers. And here are things to consider and some questions that both investors ask themselves and what we ask founders. So the problem, what is the market pain the company is addressing? And that could be that, again, you experienced it yourself with, potentially family health issues, or you were on sort of the, the payer provider side, and you see an opportunity there. And a big part of this too is how much are people willing to pay for it, and where does it sort of sit on their priority list, and how important this problem is to them. The insight, what unique insight does the founding team have on the market pain that others don't? Is it, again, more of this personal journey that they've gone through, or, did they work somewhere where they saw, issues with a journey? And then the actual solution here at number 3, what is the solution, and how is that insight, that unique insight, manifested in the solution? And again, going back to uniqueness, is this something that we haven't seen before? And that also gets into value proposition. So, VCs like to put a bunch of metrics and numbers on things as at least as much as they can, even early stage investors. And so talking about value proposition, how impactful is this solution to the problem? Is the solution providing a 30% more effectiveness, or is it cutting costs, or is it making, the journeys better? This is something that you really want to highlight when you talk to investors. And then product status and roadmap, I think this hits on the vision point of, even if you're pre-product, pre-revenue, having at least a mapping of, this is where we stand today, this is how we're going to build this thing, this is how we're going to test and iterate on it, is extremely, extremely meaningful. And then branding. So I know there's different opinions on, how much does a brand mean, and is it something that's quantitative and whatnot. This is actually really important, especially from the consumer healthcare and the consumer healthcare vertical. It's describing what that brand is and who the solution is for, and really doing deep customer research to know the customer lifestyle, typically what does their experience look like, and how are you going to turn that on its head? Making the company more of exactly what I just said, which is a lifestyle and not just a product, that people actually need this. Now, moving on to market, and that's the company's landscape. So some things to consider here, and the funny thing is, the first thing is size and target segment, but I believe it was Eric Paley at Founder Collective, which is an early stage fund, who said VCs are notoriously bad at market sizing. And I would agree with him, but this is just general guidance, and a lot of VCs like to see sort of the TAM, SAM, and some chart, if you will, or bubbles. And that's really, how big is this market? What is the actual reachable market? And, how much can we really, really capture? Along with growth trends and drivers. So, we take a look at the active aging space a lot. And so, more seniors are using technology. It's because we have that cultural lens. It's not just one person going through this aging process, it's the entire family. So how can we incorporate them into the experience, and how can we find companies that do that? And then positioning. So I mentioned this a little bit before in sort of the last slide, but who are the competitive legacy players? What are they doing that they're missing the boat? How saturated is the space? How does the company fit in within the broader space? This is especially important, just in my experience looking at the space, and, for example, mental health, right? There's a lot of players out there. We'll see who the winners are and who aren't, but it really is almost making separately a competitive positioning deck of 4 to 5 pages when you talk to investors of, here's the market, here are the players that we're competing against, here are the adjacents, and very specifically compared to each of these players, here's how we're different and how we're going to win. And that gets to the fourth point here, which is differentiation and moat. How does the company set itself apart from competitors and other solutions? And by the way, you can be answering a lot of these questions for VCs, but in the back end, they're going to be doing a lot of this themselves. And then stickiness and network effects. So what keeps customers from departing and what makes this more compelling versus other solutions? And this is true on both the B2B and B2B and B2C side. Again, happy to answer any questions as you put them in the chat. We could cover all those at the end. The third is business model, and this is how the company makes money and scales. So very easily, I think one that comes to mind is revenue. How does the company actually make money and bring in revenue? Back to my scalability point, is the way the company makes money, can it grow from 50-person startup to a 500-person startup where they have, thousands and thousands of customers? What are the challenges and benefits of the business model to that scale? Unit economics, so again, going to be different for each different company. CAC, LTV, margins, these are just basic ones. And then channels, partners, and people. So who are you actually selling into? What do those sales cycles look like? Going back to the challenges and benefits, how are you uniquely positioned to speak to corporates, to speak to, individual consumers? And then sales and marketing, and how those costs scale along with, the business growing. And is that sustainable? And then the fourth is traction. So these are KPIs and numbers that the company can present to investors. Again, going to be different at each different stage of the company. Here's some very, very basic ones. Sales, obviously, if you have sales, customer and pipeline growth. So great if you have customers. If you don't, that pipeline is really meaningful. So, you're just piloting a solution. Talk about how you captured those pilot users. What are their profiles? How are you capturing some feedback from them and iterating on the product? How are you making the product better from some of these early testers? And what does growth look like? I think it's similar to sort of that roadmap conversation of like, this is what the product looks like right now, but it's going to look like this in 6 to 8 months. Customer retention, if you have customers, obviously that speaks to the stickiness. Product execution, are you doing what you said you were going to do? And this is big. And, the tough part about VC is that we want companies to grow fast and scale fast and eventually be, multi-million, if not billion-dollar companies. And so, as you think about your fundraising needs, valuation, milestones, that's when this gets really important, because you want to be able to successfully and steadily grow into your valuation and all the things that you said you were going to do, and not feel like, or not be in a situation where you're fundraising and, a pre-seed or a seed investor that maybe didn't invest in you in the pre-seed is like, well, I remember talking to you at the pre-seed round and you said you were going to do all these things and it looks like you didn't do all these things. And so, again, this stuff becomes really important. And I think it leads into the fifth thing here, which is team execution. Really being able to form a team around you that is both well-rounded and, more importantly, extremely excited about what you're building. I think the best founders are folks who are visionaries and who are really good storytellers and really good sellers, because at the end of the day, they're able to recruit the best talent and build a culture that people just want to work for and, want to make an impact with the solution. Here are some other considerations, and this is where at the end I'll get to sort of more of the impact stuff. So usually there's customer conversations involved, what's both positive and constructive feedback from customers. You also have ecosystem conversations. That means that VCs in the back ends are going to other investors and startups and getting their, of course, not competitors or anything like that, but other founders who might know you, getting their take on who you are and the type of team that you're building. Signaling, so who are the investors to date if you do have prior investors, and what are they saying about you? Valuation and ownership, of course, an investment needs to make economic sense for a VC in order to invest. And fund value add, which I actually think more funds should focus on this. It's how can your fund be a value add to the company? That's something that we are very mindful of at Vamos. We have a lot of folks on our team who have deep healthcare experience on the operator and investor side, who just love the space. And so, for a lot of the healthcare companies that come in and see us and that we speak to and eventually partner with, we always talk about very specific ways that we could help them, whether it's on the marketing and advertising side or sales side or, team development side. And then, what's not on here, but again, really important is sort of that impact focus. So, one of the questions that we ask, if not in the first conversation, certainly in subsequent conversations, is how are you thinking about impact? Even when the company is a $500 million company, how will you, assuming that all is still the same there in terms of team and ethos and culture. How are you going to make sure that impact is tracked and there's alignment there? And that's becoming more and more important. We ask our portfolio companies, whether they're healthcare companies or not, how many diverse employees do you have? How many contractors do you use who identify as diverse? What do your end markets look like? What geographies are you in the United States? We have a portfolio company, for example, that's a women's health company. And one of the reasons that we had a lot of conviction in them is because they are, a lot of the customers that they service are in more conservative areas in the United States where maybe getting women's health products is not really looked favorably upon. And so building a community and education and, accessibility around that was huge for us. And so these are the little things that add up to that bigger impact. And that's a wrap. Hopefully this was helpful in terms of thinking about how VCs analyze deals and whether you're a founder again or future founder or future investor. Hopefully these little tidbits add to at least a baseline understanding of what you could bring to a deal or to an investor. I would say the last thing is, as much as an investor vets you should be vetting the investor and do your due diligence and really make sure that there's alignment there on the other side. If I was a founder, that's something that would be especially important to me is saying, are the investors on the other side, are they representative of maybe my end consumer or, do they ask the right questions? Is mission and impact important to them? So happy to take questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen if there's any questions in the Q&A. Oh, I see there was a question here on the acronyms. The lifetime LTV is the lifetime value of the customer. And yes, CAC is the customer acquisition cost. Okay, I see here. Are there any recommendations for small businesses, nonprofits, in developing an impact report, particularly if the group is very small, working full-time? What do VCs expect and what can we deliver to convince them? Okay, so this is a question about impact reporting. So typically what we see is, not a lot of companies do like formal impact reports. It's usually us as investors finding those metrics meaningful and going out with an Excel sheet and asking them to sort of fill out the buckets of, for example, people. So some of the examples that I mentioned were how many folks who identify as women or Latino, Latina are on your immediate team or even in executive positions. On the technical side, on like the engineering side, what does diversity look like there? Contractors. On the business side, sort of some of the geographies, and in those geographies, the income levels that you see the end customer using. Of course, if it's a B2C solution, probably harder to track on the B2B end. It would be nice though, if your company is impact focused and that's just sort of in the culture, doing the impact reports. I think, of course, it would be extremely helpful. Any data on a company and the impact that you have, whether it's in the health and wellness space or not, that you send to investors is always welcomed. The more data, the better. B2B is business to business. Sorry, I know I've been using some acronyms here that I'm just used to that others might not be. Anything else in the chat? Of course. Happy to. And by the way, one thing that I'll mention is, if you are working on something in the health and wellness space or know of other folks, again, we're really looking for amazing, diverse talent and founders and solutions. You can email me. I'll put my email in the chat here. Would love to talk, whether you have an idea now or not. Always open to chatting. What's the best way to research VCs is a question here. I think there's a bunch of different things, but there's VC rating websites that you could go on. You could just do a quick Google search of VC ratings. You can go to Google different investor lists. So if you are a founder in the consumer health space, just typing in best consumer health VCs or, diversity focused VCs. Typically they're generalist funds that do cover, the healthcare space as well. And then also just talking to folks who have been around in these different industries and verticals for a while. They're going to know the best investors, and just through, general network and conversing with founders and anyone in the startup world. What are some free resources for market research? So I find that this is big in the startup and VC world. Medium is actually a hidden gem. If you type in, for example, on Google, mental health thesis or mental health state 2021, Medium, there are going to be a lot of resources that either founders or investors or deep functional experts write about. They give their takes. It's graphics oriented, and it's not so dense. It's very digestible, very, very easy reads. And then of course, any sort of market insights. Just PitchBook has a lot, although I'm not sure if everyone would have access to that. Those types of things. Anything else? And the other thing I will say too, while we're wrapping up here, is Vamos is one of our focus areas is health and wellness. As I mentioned, what we're going to start doing is putting out more content, and would love any partnership on this, putting out more content on the general health and wellness landscape and what that means for the Latino community, what verticals are overlooked and underserved. That push is probably going to happen in the next couple of months. And again, any thought leadership partnership, would love to chat. So please. And are VCs approachable? Most of them are. I'd like to think that I am, but a lot of VCs don't answer emails, unfortunately. I would say in that case, the best way is to find someone who knows that particular person or fund. There's some sort of I would say 50-50, unfortunately. I'm an approachable VC. How do we engage with them if it's the first time? As a founder, if this is coming from the founder lens, I would say, trying to be as succinct as possible, and you get their email or you connect with a partner or principal or senior associate at the fund on LinkedIn. It's saying, here's who I am very quickly. Here's what I'm building. Here's why this is unique. Would love to chat. Here's my email, or let me know how best to reach you. And if you do need help with that, I'm happy to sit down one-on-one and come up with sort of outreach strategies. Of course.